Next slide, please. Our time together. We'll have introductions, which I'll start shortly, an overview and update of the program, the categories of the CMP, as well as common errors to avoid, and then we'll have a period of questions and answers. I'm going to take a break to allow our board members to introduce themselves, and I will start with Jelaine.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. My name is Jelaine, and I am the current CMP chair. So welcoming you all in. And I think I just went through last year my second or third renewal for my GPC. And I will turn it over to Steve.
Uh-oh.
You're
Unmute
muted,
Steve.
Steve.
Sorry about that. My name is Steve Harrington, and I am a general board member, and I've only been on the board a little over a year. But this is my sixth or seventh time. I just renewed, and my original was actually 2007. So I've renewed every 3 years since that time.
Wonderful. Carly?
Oh, hi, I'm Carly. I'm not on the board, but some of you I've communicated with via email. I'm probably your first point of contact when you reach out to that CMP inbox, and happy to be here. Welcome.
Wonderful. And I earned my GPC in 2016. I just renewed for the third time.
And we are fortunate to have Kathy just
Oh, I
joined
didn't
us as
see
well.
Kathy. Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm an attendee today. I'm working on my third renewal. I'm Kathy Hatfield. I'm from Central Ohio and on the GPCI board, and I'm happy to be here and learn.
Thank you, Kathy. See, so even as board members, it's not automatic. We still have to go through the same process that you all are going through. Next slide, please. Our objectives for today, we're going to work on understanding the value of the NCCA accreditation for GPCI and the GPC credential, identify the most appropriate GPC status and associated fees, navigate the CMP timeline based on the cohort system, accurately classify professional development activities in the CMP application, recognize CMP eligible activities, determine the best supporting documentation to collect in case of an audit, and know whom to contact for questions or accepted provider program information. Next slide, please. So let's go through credential versus certificates, etc. GPC is the first grant credential to gain national accreditation by the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, otherwise known as the NCCA. You have certificate programs in which maybe you take a class. After you finish taking that class, you take a test and then you get a certificate and you can say, okay, I am certified in this. I'm a certified grant writer. That's not what the credential is, the GPC credential is. Another form of a credential might be your degree. You went to school, you completed your bachelor's degree, your master's program, your doctorate program, and you received a diploma at the end of that. That would be an educational credential. And then you have licensure. This might be like your licensed social workers, your CPAs, where you are required by the state to have a license in that particular field. The credential that we have, the GPC, is kind of similar to the educational credential. However, with that credential, with the GPC credential, we're required to maintain it. So we have to be committed to professional development. Every 3 years, we submit our CMP, which is why you all are here now learning. Unlike our degrees, where once we have that degree, it's ours. No one can take that away from us. Other examples of credentials that are also accredited are the GPC, the CFRE, the CGMS, CVA, and the CPA. Next slide, please. What does this mean for you? The GPC credential provides tangible evidence of a professional's skills and competencies in the grant field. It's more than a test. The GPC exam is a comprehensive tool for our accredited GPC program. Accreditation enhances the credibility and value of the credential. Our accredited program safeguards the public and employers seeking to hire skilled and ethical grant professionals. And recognition from nationally respected bodies like the NCCA validates the rigor and quality of the GPCI certification program. Next slide, please. Now I am going to pass it over to Steve. He's going to talk to you all about the email notifications and reminders that you should receive.
Thank you. The communication updates that you will receive via email are on the requirements, the process changes, and the deadlines. You will get a reminder 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, and 1 month. If you stay subscribed to the GPCI mailing list to ensure that you receive all important updates. Make sure that you please verify your address, email, and phone numbers on file at the GPCI. That way we'll have everything that we need to contact you, to kind of remind you that that time is fast approaching. Next slide, please. Here you can access the latest version of that, and you can also you'll email your finished application to cmp@grantcredential.org. Next slide, please. This shows the GPC status, CMP points, and the fees associated. If you're an active status, which most of us are, you have to have 105 points, but you can get a whole lot more than that. So it's usually not real hard to get. Sometimes you have to, look around and each of the areas. You can find enough points most of the time to get your 105. So you shouldn't have a problem. The fee for your renewal is $210 every 3 years. So, but we are now offering a retired status, upon which I think we have one person in the queue. Okay. And it's $1,000, and that's a lifetime. So unless if the person is going to retire, like I will retire in a few years, and when I do, I'll probably go on to the GPC retired status, pay my $1,000, and if I decide to go back to do work on a part-time or full-time basis, I will pull my retired status and get my GPC. Now then I'll have to go back into preparing a new CMP at that point. If you have any of your applications submitted during the 3-month grace period, you will be required to pay $125. That's after. I want to check that. Is that correct? That's after the 3-month grace period.
During the 3-month grace period.
I'm sorry, during the 3-month grace period. So be very careful about that. Because sometimes it's not when you send in your initial, it's when the thing is completed. So if they have to come back and ask you for additional, if they have to ask you for additional information, you may cross over into the late fee territory. So be very careful about that. Next slide. The retired status qualifications is you have to be renewed. You have to renew your GPC at least once through the CMP process. And that you're no longer working as a paid grant professional, deriving less than 25% of your income from grant services, and must not acquire points towards the employment portion. You must use there's GPC required in place of the GPC after your name. Next slide, please. During the application grace period, the 3-month grace period allows you to submit your applications beyond your original expiration date. Activities within the application must be completed prior to the original expiration date, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. But after the grace period ends, your GPC will lapse and you forfeit your ability to use GPC credential. At that point, you must retake the exam to recertify if you allow your GPC to lapse. Your name will be removed from the list of credential provisions on the GPCI site at that point. Next slide, please. If you're in, we have different cohorts based on the time of year that you take your initial exam. I'm in cohort 1 because I took mine in January. And so my CMP application is due on March the 1st every 3 years. And I have a grace period to June the 1st. I usually try to have everything ready around the 1st of March and then try to make sure I get it done, but at least no later than the end of March. Then if you are in cohort 2, which is the conferred dates, April, May, and June, then it's June 1st and then September 1st. July, August, and September. The third cohort becomes September the 1st and then December the 1st. And then obviously number 4 is October, November, and December, which is December 1st and then March 1st of the next year. Next slide, please. I think I passed this on to Jillian.
Yeah. So I do want to note as well that please do check your official paperwork and your certificate itself, because we do have that cohort model that Steve just went through as well. So we want to continuously improve. And so we did have an update to our application. And so make sure that when you're downloading, download directly from our website so you have the most up-to-date application materials as well. We have, in the past year, the board has changed things such as we have one price for all. So it is just a $210 renewal fee for those of you active GPCs. And then we have that lifetime option as well. So it's helpful if you have the most up-to-date application so that we can make sure we're getting you into the correct categories. We do have a payment process through our contractor, Grant Professional Association. GPA is our contractor that helps us, still helps us with all of our fiscal activities. We are a distinct and separate organization from them, but we do have that collaboration. So that's why you go through the GPA membership system, even if you're no longer, or if you never were a GPA member. So that's kind of that connection with it. So the main thing is just to make sure you know what you tell us which status you are seeking. If you're seeking that retired status, you really don't have anything else you have to send to us. So that one's really easy to do. And then just also noting if it is within your late period as well. So we'll go a little bit I'll continue to go through some of the tips as you're completing this application. So Carly, if you want to send us to the next slide, that'd be great. So we're going to start with our education, our continuing education category. For all the different categories, we'll start with 1, which is education. Your employment is in category 2. Contributions to the field is 3. 4 is professional service. And category 5 is if you want to do an independent project. And we'll talk through that process briefly, but that is one that will work directly with you on that. So education itself. We're still looking at our application right now. I understand that the application itself is very small, but as much information as you can give us will really help so we don't have to request that. So make sure when you're looking at our application itself that it's clear what those specific dates are, not just years of service, that as you're filling out your information, it's really helpful to put details in. when we say the justification relevance to the grant profession, that is really key and important to us. As Lakeisha mentioned, we are accredited, so we need to make sure that everything we're doing is documented. As we all love to document everything in grants, we do need to do that here as well. So help us by making that connection if it's not apparent why the different contribution or education is connected to our profession. And then make sure you're always referencing the manual itself so that you can understand what your eligibility for different activities should be. And then in the last part, it seems if you're using our current application, it will and should tally up those points for you. But sometimes people use it in a different format and then the points don't necessarily add up. So checking those things before you submit to us helps just with the back and forth and questioning by the review committee. It makes that easier. Next slide. So we will start with our first category, education. And so for education itself, we do have a fairly new requirement the last couple of years that 20% of the points that you're claiming need to be in from AEP approved education. This is really crucial again for that accreditation. The AEP approved trainings or education, those are things that have been reviewed and that we agree that they're that they fulfill our competencies. So of the number of points you're claiming, 20% of those need to be AEP approved. So if you're not claiming the full 60 points, then you don't have to have that minimum of 12 for that. In addition to that requirement, if your education that you're claiming is not directly related to our profession, if it is applicable but not clearly provided by a grants professional, we do have a maximum of 50% of those points that can be adjacent to it. So that might be different professional development you did related to, it could be even a different type of planning process or things like that. You can claim those things, but we do need to minimize that only up to half of those credits could come from that, because again, we need to make sure you're staying on top of our profession as well. You can put in this category, if you do receive an academic degree that is related again to our profession. You cannot get a degree, to my knowledge, in grant seeking or grant management. But if your degree is applicable, you can count those points. And then mentorship can go in here as well. And we do have details on how that works as well for the mentee, as well as the mentor can put points in here under education. So common things errors that happen in the education category. Sorry, Carly, if you want to switch the slide, I think I got ahead of myself. But I'll also go through with each of the categories some common errors that can happen. So you do earn 1 point for every hour of workshop attendance. We're looking at, in particular, for those of you who go to the Grant Professional Association Summit, and this would apply as well to other conferences you go to. We typically cannot allow the more networking and social events. Those cannot count towards your 60 points. And we, for the summit, typically do not have like luncheon or keynote speakers included, but we do at the annual conference for GPA, we'll have a tracker that will tell you whether or not that can be included. And then we do require that if you're going to indicate, and I would recommend it, this is what I did myself. I wrote down the years I attended the conference and how many points I wanted to claim for that, and then include the tracker and include on the tracker that you attended those sessions. So you don't have to reproduce them in the application itself. And one common mistake is that people will say GPA conference, but they won't actually include the tracker. Next slide. So this is, again, some of the errors, just not giving enough information for our review team. And then also if you taught a course, so if you gave the presentation, that's going to go into a different section. This education is really about you participating as a learner for that. And we do encourage you, not required, but you can list more than 60 points in this section in case some things are unallowed, and that that way, or disallowed, that way I can, or the review team can go back and review and have more than needed. It's not a problem if something is disallowed that would impact whether or not you're approved. We're going to contact you before we're going to do everything we can to help you retain this and to help you get us the information needed and documentation to retain it. So certainly can put in more education if you want to. So category 2 is going to be your employment itself. And this can be, you receive points for any type of grant professional employment. So this can be if you are, like I am, an employee of a college. So that one, I can get my full 36 points through that position I have. Some are doing contracting. Some of them are also doing, if you have a couple of different types of jobs within the profession. We have had some people who will have both a time period where they have a paid position and then a time period as a consultant and or being paid for reviewing. And so those things can all be added here. Anytime you're paid for those things would come here. The common errors, which isn't hopefully going to be as common, is if retired candidates put points here. We don't need any points from you at all for that. And some of the common errors too are that you just have more points in here because you're both working and you're a consultant on the side as well. So those would just be errors in it, but this one is pretty straightforward as far as the points that you receive for your paid work in the grant profession. Next slide. So category 3 is the contributions to the field. And so when we get into 3 and 4, this is where we often have more questions coming in. Variety of ways that you're contributing to the field. This can be through different communications projects, again, all within our profession. So that might be a book, it might be blog posts, it could be podcasts, things like that, things that you're contributing. This is where, if you're not paid to be on your grant review panel, this would be where you would put that time. So for example, I have served on United Way panels in my community. That can go right here into contributions to the field. That we would just give you 10 points per panel, and you can claim 1 panel per year. So that one, you don't have to count necessarily your hours or anything. We'll just give you the 10 points because it varies how much those reviews are. We do have a couple of different types of reviews that we see in here as well. So if you're not certain if it fits, just let me know and I will ask the committee to see how it would fit in here. But I understand now, we have the unfunded list. There's a lot of different types of panel reviewing that's happening. So as long as it's not paid, it would go contributions to the field. You can also have grant management projects, and this can be within your organization as well, that are related to, again, furthering and enhancing the grant management or grant professional activities at either your organization or in a different organization as well. That is 15 points per project for that one as well. This one is, and the other note though is that this is not if you're setting up a process for a grant you were awarded, that would not count. But if you were overhauling your grant management systems at your university or in your organization, that could count as your grant related management project. Next slide. So this is where we have our difference between if I am going to the conference and I am in the audience and listening to the presentation, I'm going to put my point over in education. However, if I'm actually speaking, then I'm going to put my 1 point per hour of presentation itself. We are only able to award for the presenting time, not any of the prep time that went into it, but your actual time in front of your audience or your learners, that's what you would receive that 1 point per hour for. If you're also doing things like presenting or facilitating different groups, including those study groups that could be for the GPC, that's 1 point per hour of the, again, actual time with your learners for that. If you do receive or earn another recognized professional credential, such as a CFRE, CGMS, that is 10 points total for that. You are not able to count points though for renewing your CFRE in that as well. However, your education credits, you can use education credits for both us and for your other credentials as well. They're not limited that way, but just renewing it is not considered a contribution to the field. Attaining it is. Next slide. This one we do have a lot of errors that happen in this one. And so that's actually probably where I'm reaching out with questions from the committee most often. And that is what I'd mentioned, that you're not able to count your prep time for preparing for a webinar or for preparing for the presentation, but your time in the presentation and giving it, that is counted. So people will often list the different grant management or grants that they've managed or brought in. Bringing those in or managing the actual grant does not count as a contribution to the field. However, creating a new system, fine-tuning processes, those types of things can be considered grant management projects. Then also workshops that you've taught that may be related to the field you work in. So if you're in healthcare, if you are a nurse, if you're teaching something related to the nursing field, that would not count here in contributions to the field because that is our own grant profession. It could count potentially if you're not paid to do it for some volunteer work for that. And then people often will say that they renewed their CFRE and ask for points for that. And again, we cannot award just for renewal of a different a different credential, excuse me. Next slide. Professional service. So this one is another area that sometimes we work, and I can meet with you to try to discern where we want to put different things. So professional service is looking at the different, again, for our profession, this is looking at membership that you have in, for example, a Grant Professional Association or others like NGMA. Anything that's grant related, those membership years would count for professional service. And you can actually you can receive points for being a national member as well as a state member or chapter member, I should say, because it's not a regional member. So for example, even NGMA, I know they have the national, but then they also do have those regional groups that work in. Same thing with GPA. For being a member, you can only receive up to 2 points per year. If you're a committee member, you can receive 4 points. And then once you're an officer or a chair or a board member, that's where your points really are going to add up for that. And those are points per year of your service for that. So membership points are not cumulative, but you can claim the points for national and local. And then, but you would also want to do that in your highest level of service. So what that means is if you are a national GPA board, or you're a national GPA member, but for your chapter, you are the president of your chapter, you're going to count your points for the membership, but then you're going to count the 2 points for national membership per year, but your committee chair or officer points will be 8 points per year So instead of counting just being a state member or a chapter member, you're going to instead count that you were the president of the chapter. You can't count membership in the chapter as well as leadership in the chapter, because that would be kind of double counting for that. Same way, if you're on the national board, you would count national board for your 12 points. You're not also going to count the national membership. So that one is it sometimes trips us up. And I think we might have an example on the next page of that as well. So hopefully that kind of helps so that you're, and again, per organization. So that's where you're going to be counting as you kind of go through most people are doing national and state or regional chapters that they're doing for that. If you're just members of it, that's easier. But again, if you're going to have a leadership position, then you're going to, instead of doing the 2 points to be a member, you're going to count the 4 points instead of that. And I'm always happy to answer questions or look at your resume for that one. Go ahead and go to the next one where we have common mistakes on this one. This is also showing some of the different leadership positions that you might have. I know for many of our GPA chapters, you have big conferences. So if you're the chair of that, you can be awarded 20 points for that. If you're a planning member, it can be 10 points. If you're a conference volunteer, that as well it's 0.5 points per hour. For just volunteering at a conference for that as well. But we recognize how much work you all put into those type of things. And so we want to ensure that the points reflect that. Next slide. This is also where your community service can come in.
Well, you should be able to buy one with the credit card without a problem.
So the example that I had used before with the nursing profession, if that is pro bono work that you're doing, that could fit here. So your volunteer work can fit into professional service. It does not have to be in the grants profession for that. And then you'd have, again, maximums for that. That would go under community service. So 1 point per 4 hours for that. It's the same as pro bono work. So if you're doing volunteer work with whatever local organization, you can count that, again, up to 10 points max for each of those. We do often have special task forces or committees. We have many of you right now who are reviewing our scholarship applications or review our different eligibility or CMP. We will send to you, and our ambassadors will send to you the points that we attribute to those things. And that is true as well if you're doing different review. I know, again, Grant Professional Association, there was a committee that was just reviewing all the education that was submitted for the conference. You would be able to receive points for those type of work as well. And then for non-paid internships, coordinating educational programs, you can receive up to 15 points for those as well. The key to professional services, this is not paid. So any of the things that you're claiming here, we want to make sure that you're not being paid for that work. If it's paid, it would need to go into category 2 instead for that. And again, the community service does not have to be grant related at all. That part is helpful. Next slide for that one. So this is the one where I'd already mentioned that I'm claiming both being a chapter member and a chapter board chair. I can only claim one of those things, not both. And then just the national chapter memberships, just counting errors on claiming those. Those are the common things that we see in these. I will say it always helps, again, the reviewers. So if you write down that you did work for Boys and Girls Club, we know what that is. But if it's a nonprofit that is unique to your community, if you have room, either give us a description or just tell us that it is like a social service agency for women. Just tell us that. We don't always have to have the name as much, because sometimes, at least in my region, they're changing names. Like hospice now is now Hearts in Action in my community. As a national reviewer, I would not know what that is, but I know what hospice is. So if it's a unique name, go ahead and give us a description of that as well. Next slide. The last category that we offer is independent project, and it's exciting. We have had some independent projects this year. This is a process that we do ask you to start ahead of time and work directly with the CMP chair. I bring this to our board of directors as well as our certification committee so that we can make sure that, again, that we're asking a lot of different questions of you, but also ensuring that it's meeting all the different standards. So it needs to be pre-approved by the GPCI board. It needs to be focused, again, on the grants profession. And we're really looking to ask you to help move our profession forward. Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily research, but we would like you to disseminate the results of that project. And I will say, as an educator, that doesn't mean that you're only disseminating success, right? I want to learn from your mistakes too. So we're asking people in this category to provide some type of white paper maybe, or something that we can also have to further the field and the profession so that we can all learn from those independent projects. Next slide. Supporting documentation. So I did mention earlier that if you're going to just indicate that you attended the conference, a conference, and you'll include a listing or one of our trackers that we provide for the conference, we do ask for that documentation up front. However, a lot of our documentation is not going to be asked for on the application itself. You are all GPCs, you all have to follow the ethics and codes. And so you're signing your application, and by signing, you're attesting that this is accurate. And so we do not at this stage ask you for that supporting documentation. However, we are mandated to audit a certain percentage of all of our CMPs. And in the audit process, that's where then the committee and I will be the spokesperson for asking you for the documentation for it. So it's helpful to just keep that documentation as you're going along. So for the educational events that you attend, documentation can look like things like your registration receipts. And it doesn't mean that have to be a paid, but any registration confirmation that you received, if you keep the outline of the agenda, any handouts, things like that for the workshop, you can keep copies of those as well as supporting documentation. I will make a note that if you are attending an AEP educational event, first, we hope that our AEP providers will actually give you a certificate that you can keep in your file. We would not necessarily need to see all of those different agenda and workshop and handouts because we've already reviewed that curriculum itself. So that makes it a little bit easier. But otherwise, if you're not sure if it's apparent that it fits with our profession, keep those different things. Often you can access them later to asking the trainer for that. For the grant professional employment, you just need a letter from your employer if you're an employee stating when you were employed, or if you're no longer there and you don't want to ask for that letter, you can have pay stubs taking out all your personal information for that. For consultants, we do ask for some different, we'll ask you for some endorsement letters from some of your clients if possible. And again, everything's confidential, but again, we'll work with you on that. So any article for contributions to the field, give us what you have. And again, we'll work with you on that. If you wrote something that was published, that's easier because you have it there, but it may be different things that are like, if you are a mentee or a mentor, maybe you have some different meeting notes. And these don't have to be formal minutes from a meeting, but just telling us the types of things, documenting what you did. Again, we would probably ask that your mentee would sign off on something indicating that they were mentored by you. So for professional projects, those things can be the minutes showing attendance, if you were a board member, if you received a certificate showing for your volunteer work, that certainly would be letters from people who had received services. I know for this one in the past, I have used just a letter from the nonprofit that I was volunteering with. I just asked them for a letter, and they were happy to generate that for me. And then for those independent projects themselves, we will agree upon those, the board and certification committee, as well as the GPC will agree on all those things. And we'll send you the approval through emails that you'd want to keep as well. Next slide, please. I know audits are never like that exciting, but we hope we make it easy for you. So again, your documentation itself is only required for the audit. So if you're selected for audit, 10% of our applications need to be audited. And then we typically have audited just once a year in October for that. We will let you know by October 1st if you are selected for audit, and then you typically have the 30 days to respond to that. And then we as well are on a time that we're supposed to respond as well to that. We have had people who have extenuating circumstances. We have to document everything if that is not feasible for you, as well as the audit process itself. Unfortunately, some people seem to have been randomly selected numerous times. So you can give us an appeal as to why it might be difficult for that. So again, the committee can look at that. But we hope that you'll want to have be a part of the audit, because it does help us again with proving out everything that we're doing as an organization. Next slide. So Carly's going to share our newest program that we have here at GPCI. Oh, we need you to unmute.
Sorry about that. All right, this is the GPCI Endorsing Employer Program, and it is a great program just to spotlight employers that value the GPC. So if you own an organization, or you work for one, or this is even a great way to convince your organization that they should better support the GPC, your CMP, or get in it initially, there's a very short application to fill out. I will include that in the follow-up email, but it's basically we put on our website and we spotlight employers that encourage or require grant professional staff to obtain the GPC. We provide also provide support in part or full for initial GPC certifications, and then also provide support in part or in full for ongoing GPC recertification fees, and that these employers provide support for the education you need to get the GPC or maintain it, part of the CMP. So like I said, it is a very short application. I'll include a link to it, but we very much encourage, if you yourself are a head of an organization that values the GPC, or your organization does, or you want them to, this is a great way, sharing this program, to spread awareness about the GPC and organizations that value it. So thank you. All right, back to you, Jelaine.
Great. And Carly also shared with our committee just some of the questions that you had sent in ahead of time. So as I look through them, I think many of them have been answered, but let me see. So the one question had come in is, I do not know if I have enough credits that count to renew my GPC. If it lapses, will I need to retake the exam? And the answer is yes. If you do, if it lapses, the only way to retain that would be to retake the exam. We do everything we can to work with you, though, to make sure that doesn't happen. So if you're concerned, reach out and I can set up a time to visit with you. I think I failed to mention, Steve did hit on the fact that you only need 105 points to renew. So we hope that we will be able to work with you to get to those points. Oftentimes, education is something that people maybe don't have resources at their organization for. We do try to have a balance of AEP approved education. Many are from no cost to the learners. So we hope that that can be a way to do it too. But I would say if you're concerned about it, reach out to us early and we can try to work with you to try to ensure that you can retain that GPC. Maybe some people like to take tests, but I'm not one of them. So I don't want to retake it to sit for it. But we also have a lot of volunteer opportunities like scholarship reviewing and things too. So we can try to get you those points, even if you're not full-time in the profession. We'll work with you on that. So Kelly, did you want to share a question?
Yes. I question about I put in this in the chat, but if you have certificates from your various webinars, those would suffice instead of like outlines and agendas and all that. Okay. And do you get credit for the webinars that are recordings as well as the ones that are live?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
And I was wondering who you would, if I wanted to talk about discuss an independent project, I would reach out to you.
Yes, if you want to use the CMP email, Carly and I monitor that, and we'll set up a time for you to visit with me, and then I can help prepare what we'll bring to the board. Do not have a formal process, or we have a formal process, but not application. But we now, fortunately, have had a couple that have come, and we're really excited about these projects, and that has helped us to fine tune. So we do think that this fall there'll be an actual application. But right now, I meet with you, and I will help you put forward the responses to the commonly asked questions by the board as they review these.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to just get my spurt of quick questions, which is like if you serve, and I think someone else asked this, but so if you serve on a chapter committee and then a national in the GPA board committee, it's not a board committee or just a committee, I guess.
A national committee, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a subcommittee, but anyway, so you get 4 points for each one for each year.
Right, that's correct.
But no points for being a member, correct?
Correct, right? Because you would be at each level, you're deciding, am I going to ask for points for being a committee member or being a member? I can't have points for both of those at a national level. So you kind of decide each tier of that. And again, this is, I know we use a lot of GPA examples, but that would be true for NGMA, NCURA, higher ed, SRA, any of those organizations as well. If you're serving at a national level, you're going to receive more points for that versus just being a member. But we'll give you points for the membership too, because that is valuable. The information and the professionalism of being a member. But so you would choose, I guess you could pick just member, but I would always go with the more points that you have. So you could have 4 for each of those committees, or you could just have membership points for each of those, but you can't have both.
Right. And just 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
So if there was the GPA leadership development cohort, do you get any points for that or no?
Yes. And we did not yet formalize how many that would be, but that would absolutely be a part of that. I think we need to decide if we would encourage you to put that under, the mentor-mentee relationship and education, or if we would put that more under the professional service. So we need to that's a new program last year. So we need to figure out exactly where we want to put that one because it could fit under either of those. Okay, but you would definitely have points for those. And we do max, there's a maximum of number of points but you would have points for that.
So we need to follow up with you about that, or the CMP
for that specific program. Yes. And actually, thank you for mentioning that, Kelly, because I will, I'll have the certification committee and board decide, and then we will actually reach out to everyone who had been a part of that inaugural program. And I think eventually they'll be continuing that. It's not this year, but we will reach out to you with information specific to that once that decision is made.
Well, I'm sorry. Last question, or can we get the slides and then I'm done? I'm sorry to.
Oh, yes, the slides will come. Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Kelly. Other people have the same questions, I'm sure. The slides will be sent, and then Carly will send you some different links as well. So we'll send all those things out as a follow-up along with the recording too. And Randy had a question too, so I want to make sure I call on him. It's nice to see
Thank you, Julian. I just want to mention, on the question, it's a compliment. I worked with Jillian to get a project approved, and it was pretty exhilarating. And I'm exhilarated about the project. So I found you to be really easy to work with and supportive. So if you are thinking about a project, which I think are important to promote the profession, if I could just mention, I'm in Lenawee County, Michigan. There's a lot of nonprofits really struggling. And so I'm creating a Lenawee County grant writer group so we can support each other. And Jillian was just on it, man. So I just really appreciated it. And I think it's going to help a lot of us, meet myself, but also so many of the nonprofits that are just struggling right now. So we're going to meet once a month to start with. And the idea is to mentor each other, support each other, make announcements, talk about this federal registration seminar, webinar I looked at last week. But anyway, thank you so much. And just if you're thinking about it, I know Jillian's really good to work with. She'll give you some hints and eventually you get your approval. So that's all. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Part of what I get to do is just try to bring it forward your projects to the board. And so then that's also sometimes I have to come back with questions and things too, but thank you. We are excited about that project as well. We will hope to put a site onto our website with any white papers or anything we can disseminate from the projects that have been approved as well. I know we're running short on time, so I also want to just make sure I'm taking the time to thank everyone for coming. I was telling Lakeisha, our board president, before we started, how wonderful it is to read your applications and how in awe I am as someone who reads what to verify committee, or I am a reviewer as well. It's a pleasure to read the things that you're doing and the influence and impact you're having both on our profession, but also in your communities. It's really amazing to see. And I said to Lakeisha, I guess ask a busy person to do something, because you're all doing this often as a full-time employee or a contractor or having your own consulting firm as well. So thank you for coming today. I want to make sure we get that gratitude out. And make sure you do reach out to us at the CMP website or CMP email. Go to our website as well. But if you have any questions at all, it sometimes takes me a while to get to them, and I apologize for that. But I will definitely try to work with you on any questions that you have and anything you want to bring forward as well to the board. But other questions people have, and certainly if you need to go, we fully understand that. But we'll stay on for a couple more minutes if there are other questions that we can address. CJ.
I think I know the answer to this,
Okay.
But if you got a scholarship to a conference and you were a volunteer because of that, you wouldn't get points, correct? Because you already got the scholarship. You would get points?
You would, because you're not really being paid to volunteer. So yes, you definitely count those points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's not, I want to be really careful with, again, higher ed. Scholarships are gifts. I mean, those have no strings.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not a scholarship.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely still count your volunteer points for
Great. Thanks.
that was a great question. Other questions? And thank you as well to Steve and Kathy, Lakeisha, Carly, everyone who just keeps these webinars going. I know this one in particular, we have a lot more questions, probably just because of your specific situations. Oh, I should have mentioned, I think that most of the other questions we had received were, I hope, addressed. But again, anytime you have questions, just send us an email. So thank you for your time and have a wonderful